What if everything you thought you knew about Prince Harry was a lie? The words echoed through the hallowed halls of London's High Court, bouncing off marble walls like a thunderclap. Cameras clicked, flashes lit up the courtroom like a war zone, and a hush fell over the room, so complete you could hear the nervous breathing of every person inside. And then he collapsed. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Prince Harry, the so-called spare of the British monarchy, gripped the edge of the judge's bench, his face pale, his knees buckling beneath him. Witnesses gasped. Lawyers rushed forward. But it wasn't a heart attack. It wasn't faintness. It was disbelief. Absolute, soul-shattering disbelief. Because in his hand was the document that could rewrite royal history. The DNA result. And it wasn't just any result. It was a revelation so shocking, so explosive, that it threatened to topple decades of carefully guarded secrets. James Hewitt, the former cavalry officer, the scandalous lover of Princess Diana, was named the biological father of Prince Harry. Pause for a moment. Let that sink in. Every photo, every family anecdote, every story you've been told about the young prince suddenly seems like a carefully constructed illusion. The prince you thought you knew, the son of Princess Diana and Prince Charles, the beloved rebel of the royal family, might never have existed in the way we imagined. And this wasn't some tabloid rumor resurfacing. This was official, legal, court-certified DNA evidence. The world didn't know yet, but everything was about to change. Immediate emotional anecdote. Harry's eyes were hollow, haunted. The courtroom staff described a man who looked like he had aged a decade in the past hour. He leaned heavily on the polished oak bench, gripping it as if it could anchor him to reality. His breath came in shallow, rapid gasps. His lawyer, a seasoned figure who had handled high-profile cases for decades, looked genuinely stunned. He whispered something to Harry, something we may never know, but the expression on Harry's face told the story of a man who had just lost not only his footing, but his identity. The whispers were instant. Is it true? Can it be? Outside the courthouse, journalists shouted questions. Cameras panned over crowds that had gathered within seconds, phones recording every expression, every tremor, every falter. Social media lit up like a wildfire. #HarryDNA, trending globally within minutes. By the time the doors closed, millions were watching, hearts pounding in unison, waiting for the next headline. It was as if history had pressed fast forward and landed on its most scandalous chapter. Tease shocking revelations without giving them away. But here's the thing. What you just heard isn't the whole story. Yes, the DNA test proved what no one dared to say out loud. Yes, the whispers of James Hewitt's relationship with Diana have long haunted the palace corridors. But the results are just the beginning. Because what this document also hints at is a web of secrets, cover-ups, and betrayals that reaches far beyond Harry himself. It's about the monarchy, about public perception, about power, and about decades of carefully crafted narratives designed to shield not just the royal family, but the very image of the monarchy itself. What if the people you trusted to protect the crown were also hiding truths that would destroy lives? What if the truth was more shocking than anyone imagined? And most importantly, how did this secret manage to stay hidden for so long? Show why this story matters now. This isn't just a royal scandal. This isn't a juicy gossip story to scroll past. This is history being rewritten in real time. Imagine the implications. The line of succession, the rules, the titles, the privileges, all potentially in question. Harry's identity, his upbringing, the public persona of a rebellious prince suddenly becomes a story of concealed truths and hidden betrayals. The British public, who have supported, admired, or criticized him for decades, suddenly face a moral and emotional reckoning. Who is the man behind the headlines? Who is the child that Diana raised with love? Or did she? Even more intriguing, the ripple effect reaches beyond Harry. The entire royal family, the brothers, the parents, the public figures, are now cast under a new, relentless light. Every statement they've made, every smile they've shared at official events, suddenly feels like it could have been staged, carefully curated, even deceptive, and the global attention is unstoppable. International media outlets are already scrambling. Royal watchers in the United States, Australia, and Europe are dissecting every moment. Memes are circulating, hashtags trending, analysts debating the fallout in real time. One DNA test, and the world shifted on its axis. Build emotional connection with the audience. Now, let's step into Harry's shoes for a moment. Imagine being told, in a sterile courtroom, under the gaze of the world, that your father, the man whose very name shaped your childhood, is not your biological parent. Your sense of self, your identity, your place in the world, ripped away in a single moment. No wonder he collapsed. No wonder his knees gave out. No wonder his voice was choked when he tried to speak. And yet, even in the midst of this chaos, one thought must have pierced through the fog. What does this mean for me, for my family, for my future? That question alone sets the stage for a storm of betrayal, confrontation, and unearthing secrets the royal family has kept hidden for decades. Tease the coming chapters, curiosity gaps. What you're about to hear goes beyond a single revelation. In the next hour, we will explore the moment the DNA was taken and why it was kept secret for so long, James Hewitt's reaction, and how history's most infamous royal scandal is now back in the spotlight. How Prince Charles, Princess Diana's legacy, and even Meghan Markle have been impacted by this bombshell. The global media frenzy, social media uproar, and the palace's frantic attempts to control the narrative. Hidden letters, secret meetings, and shocking communications that paint a picture far darker than anyone could imagine. And that's just the beginning. Because the DNA test isn't just a revelation, it's a gateway into decades of secrets, lies, and truths the royal family never wanted exposed. But perhaps the most shocking fact is this. Even after the test was read aloud in court, after the collapse, after the gasps and whispers, there's one part of this story that no one outside the palace knows. One detail, one revelation, one truth that changes the meaning of the entire DNA test. And it's not about Harry. It's about someone else. Someone whose name, when revealed, could rewrite history yet again. Stay with us, because what comes next will challenge everything you thought you knew about the monarchy, about family, and about the prince who once seemed untouchable. The morning air outside London's High Court was crisp, yet tense, a kind of charged stillness that hinted something monumental was about to happen. Crowds had gathered hours before the doors even opened. Journalists, camera crews, royal enthusiasts, and casual onlookers pressed against the ornate gates, their phones raised, microphones poised, and notebooks ready. Social media had already erupted overnight, threads buzzing with speculation. Hashtag Harry DNA, hashtag royal scandal, hashtag James Hewitt. It was trending globally, and no one, not the police, not the press office, not even the ushers inside the courthouse, was fully prepared for what was about to unfold. Inside, the courtroom smelled of polished wood, faint lavender from cleaning, and something else, anticipation. The air was thick, electric, as if the walls themselves knew they were about to witness history in the making. Reporters whispered among themselves, flipping through notes about Harry's life, Diana's past, and the shadowy history of James Hewitt, whose name had haunted the palace for decades. Then he arrived. Prince Harry entered quietly at first, flanked by security and his legal team. His face was pale, jaw tense, and eyes darting. He wore the practiced calm of someone trained to appear unflappable, but it was just a mask. Every step seemed measured, but there was a subtle tremor, a hesitation. The whispers in the courtroom grew. Is he okay? Does he know what's coming? As Harry took his seat, the cameras captured it all. The stoic bow to the judge, the tight grip on the bench, the barely perceptible shift in posture. And then the room waited. The judge, a figure both commanding and unreadable, cleared their throat. We are here to review the confidential DNA results pertaining to the claims regarding Prince Harry's paternity, the judge began. Their voice was calm, but each word dropped like a hammer in the silent room. The media had been barred from certain areas, but the tension was so palpable that even the reporters in the back could feel it pressing against their chests. Harry leaned forward. A bead of sweat traced down his temple. His hands were clasped tightly together, knuckles white. He had spent weeks bracing for this moment, rehearsing responses, but no preparation could ready him for what was about to happen. The court clerk, a quietly efficient woman with a stern demeanor, handed over the envelope containing the DNA results. Time seemed to stretch. Cameras captured every twitch, every micro-expression, every flicker of panic across the prince's face. And then he opened it. At first, he squinted, as if the letters on the page were moving, dancing, mocking him. His lips moved, whispering a name he couldn't quite believe. And then he collapsed. It wasn't a theatrical swoon. It wasn't an exaggeration for attention. His legs buckled beneath him, and he gripped the bench for support. Lawyers rushed forward. The judge looked stunned, eyebrows knitting together. A hush fell over the courtroom, broken only by the clicking of cameras and the soft murmur of the audience gasping. "Your Royal Highness, are you all right?" one of the lawyers asked, voice urgent but controlled. Harry didn't answer at first. He seemed suspended in time, staring at the paper, a swirling mix of horror, disbelief, and betrayal etched across his features. And then, in a barely audible voice, "James Hewitt." The court froze. Even the seasoned reporters in the back, used to decades of royal drama, were momentarily speechless. This was no ordinary headline. This was seismic. The human reaction. Harry's reaction was more than shock. It was an identity crisis playing out in real time. Imagine being told, in front of the world, that everything you believed about your past is false. That your very DNA, the one thing you've carried your entire life, ties you not to the father you grew up with, but to someone whose existence you had only encountered in scandalous whispers and tabloid stories. The court staff described him as trembling, pale, almost unrecognizable. His lawyer guided him to a chair, but Harry's eyes remained fixed on the document, scanning and rescanning, as if reading it again might undo the truth. The whispers grew louder. Is this real? Could it be a mistake? How could this happen? Outside, the crowd's reaction was immediate. Phones began live-streaming the chaos, and social media exploded with speculation. Within minutes, hashtags were trending worldwide. Memes depicting Harry's shock, dramatic comparisons to his mother, and exaggerated illustrations of James Hewitt flooded feeds across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Every news outlet from New York to Sydney scrambled to issue updates. Experts were called, and royal analysts began dissecting every possible consequence. Palace shockwaves. Back at Buckingham Palace, the phone lines were ablaze. Advisors, aides, and private secretaries were scrambling, trying to piece together what had just occurred. The monarchy, built on centuries of image, control, and narrative, suddenly faced a raw, uncontrollable truth that could not be spun. Prince Charles was reportedly stunned and silent, an unusual state for someone accustomed to navigating crises. Prince William, already wary of media attention, was said to be furious and deeply concerned about the ramifications. Not just for Harry, but for the monarchy as a whole. Staffers speculated about whispered meetings, hastily called council sessions, and security measures heightened to unprecedented levels. Even Meghan Markle, far from the UK, was immediately pulled into the orbit of chaos. The palace reportedly considered whether a statement should be issued, whether the news could be contained, or if this was now a public event that could no longer be controlled. Hints of a larger story. But even as cameras captured Harry's collapse and social media erupted, insiders whispered that this DNA revelation was only the tip of the iceberg. There were rumors, persistent, chilling whispers, that the test might trigger additional disclosures, secrets that some in the palace would do anything to keep hidden. Letters from Diana, private correspondences, confidential advisors' notes, all of it threatened to surface. And if that happened, the entire narrative of the royal family, carefully curated for decades, could crumble. Even some of the lawyers present in the courtroom hinted at it, in hushed tones. This is not just about paternity. There's more, much more, and it will shock the world in ways no one is prepared for. The audience was left with a tense, almost unbearable anticipation. Everyone in that room, and every viewer following the story from afar, was forced to wonder. What else had been hidden? What secrets could this single DNA test uncover? And how far would the royal family go to protect its legacy? As Harry regained his composure, the judge called for order. But even as calm returned to the courtroom, a subtle tension lingered, a sense that the world had shifted irreversibly. Harry glanced at the lawyers, then at the envelope, and whispered, "This changes everything, and not everyone is going to survive the fallout." The courtroom fell into an eerie silence as the clerk cleared her throat and prepared to read the DNA result. Cameras clicked nervously, capturing every subtle movement, every tremor, every intake of breath. Reporters leaned forward, phones poised, pens hovering over notebooks, knowing they were about to witness something monumental. Prince Harry sat rigid, his fingers interlaced, staring at the envelope as if willing it to keep its secrets. The world had already seen his collapse, the shaky, haunted expression, the tremor in his knees. But what came next would eclipse even that first moment of shock. The judge lifted their gaze, voice calm, yet commanding. "The DNA analysis has been completed. It is accurate and verified. The result identifies the biological father of Prince Harry." Every head in the courtroom swiveled toward him. A collective inhale swept through the room, like a storm pausing on the horizon. The judge paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. Then came the words that would stun everyone. James Hewitt. Time froze. Some people gasped audibly. Some whispered prayers or curses under their breath. And Prince Harry, well, he did not remain seated. This time, there was no gradual falter, no trembling lean on the bench. His face went pale as if the color had been drained by some invisible hand. His body gave a convulsive shudder. He gripped the edge of the polished oak desk with both hands, knuckles white, heart pounding, mind racing. "James Hewitt?" he whispered, almost inaudibly, as if speaking the name could make the nightmare vanish. But the room, the world, and history itself had just spoken. The immediate reaction. The lawyers reacted first, trained professionals keeping composure, whispering reassurances, hands poised to shield their client. But there was no mistaking it. The prince was shell-shocked. Reporters and courtroom observers later described a man struggling to reconcile decades of identity with a single line on a page. He looked around at familiar faces, the judge, the clerks, the security officers, and yet it was as if he were seeing them through a glass wall, disconnected from reality. Every memory of childhood, every story of family, every anecdote about Princess Diana's love for her son suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else.